NewsTalk Tonight is on with your host, Jim Richards, on the iHeartRadio Talk Network.
Thanks for your time. And don't forget, you can check out our podcast whenever you want to. You can take us wherever you go. The iHeart Talk Radio Network and NewsTalk Tonight with myself, Jim Richards. Follow us and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. That's the important thing, to follow and subscribe wherever you get podcasts, folks, and enjoy things like the thing that we just did, whatever the hell that was. It was our draft, best wrestlers of all time, with people freaking out that Hulk Hogan was not on the list. I guess I knew that Hulk Hogan got canceled. I also thought Ric Flair got canceled, but he was on the list. So what do I know? It's time for our segment, Ask Blank Anything. And I was just thinking when I was watching some of these videos and getting angry, by the way, that what Will Smith has had to put up with over the last little while, listening to his wife do all of these different shows. Now, she's had a different spin on it recently, and to be fair, I have not heard the entire interviews that she has done, and people can cherry pick things that might be taken out of context, but it does seem like it does a disservice to somebody who stood up for her good name, slapping Chris Rock a couple of years ago. And now we hear that they've been separated since 2016. So divorce or separation can't always be fun. We thought we'd ask Laura Paris on, who is an associate lawyer and team lead with Shulman Partners LLP. Her passion is helping people, which was a primary factor in why she got into a family law. And she joins us right now. Laura, thank you very much for your time.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for having me.
You used to do a radio show here, did you not?
I did. I think it was every Sunday, 4 o'clock, I believe. I was up about a year, I believe I was on.
And what kind of crazy phone calls did you get?
You know, we had topics every week. So usually the phone calls came in centered around the topics that we had. Nothing in particular really stood out. I think that when people were calling, they were actually quite focused on getting whatever kind of free legal advice they were able to get. So I did get a lot of serious and actually pretty helpful questions for people listening in. Nothing too outrageous that stands out to me. Okay.
What are the common questions that you get? Because you're right. If you have a friend who's a lawyer, a doctor, or I'm guessing a handful of other professions, maybe a hairstylist, everybody's asking for a freebie.
So I'd say one of the main questions that I get surrounds spousal support. A lot of people in situations, especially when you're talking about kind of that traditional nuclear family where there's one person who's the breadwinner and the other stayed at home. They want to understand what their obligation is going to be. And a lot of people find it, really outrageous to wrap their head around the fact that they were the ones working the relationship and that they're going to have to continue working to support the unemployed individual for, quite some time, especially in a long-term relationship, potentially for, close to the rest of your life or at least to the age of retirement. So I'd say that's one of the main questions that I get and responses that are quite shocking. Another thing is pensions. A lot of people ask me about pensions and are of the belief that they contribute to their own pension. Their pension is meant for them and their own retirement. So why on earth would that ever fall into a family law proceeding? And why would that ever be something that they would have to divide? And they're unfortunately mistaken in that, as an asset is an asset. And for the most part, other than some limited exceptions like an inheritance or a gift of some sort, pretty much everything falls into equalization.
Do you think after doing your job for a while, you would be I just wonder if divorce lawyers, they could be hired before people get married to hang out with people and figure out whether or not it's going to work. Do you think you're a pretty good analyst at that?
You know what? I don't know. I think that's a somewhat of a hard question to answer. I'm not too jaded by the job yet. I still like to believe that, people, like, if you have the will to work hard in a relationship, and appreciate that a relationship isn't something that's easy and that requires work every day, that any relationship has the ability to be successful. So I try to still stay optimistic about it. I don't know, ask me maybe in another 10 years and I might have a different opinion on it, but I still try to be optimistic. But if you did call me around at the beginning of the relationship, what I would tell you is ways to protect yourself, and if there's a need for a domestic contract of some sort. So that's definitely something that I've already started doing, amongst my friends and peers. If I do catch on, like, hey, maybe you should get a prenup done here, I definitely do chime in on those situations.
Are you in a relationship?
I am.
I wonder what you learn from your job that you apply to your relationship. I got to say, whenever I see people getting divorced, sometimes I'm like, these two just don't know how to talk to each other. They just don't know how to communicate. And it got out of control. And then the resentment settled in. And before you know it, they hate each other. But, probably pretty fixable if they just wouldn't always be, they listen instead of scream at each other.
Absolutely. Like when I first started out, I remember someone more senior to me. I had a conversation with them, and I was at the point where I was still quite emotional about my job, and I would feel very bad. Not that I don't still have emotions in the job, but you kind of got to learn to separate yourself. But
well, let's stop there. Let's try to remember what you were talking about there. But I find that really interesting. You're saying that a couple coming in, they're having a hard time. It's hard not wearing your job sometimes. They talk about police officers who have interactions with, awful things, paramedics who see death all the time. The energy that you would get from, trying to, make happy people who are always angry, maybe at the worst time in their life. I'm guessing it's hard to distance yourself from that. Do you take that energy home with you?
100%. In my early years, there was often nights that I would come home crying, and just be completely devastated and taking everything on, and feeling sorry for people, feeling sorry about, decisions that would happen in court, feeling sorry about the money that people had to pay in order to get things done. Obviously feeling sorry when you hear sad stories, like things that happen to children or children getting caught in the middle. I had to get to the point in my career where I realized that I work within a box, and that my role is limited to the law. And while a lot of what I do intersects with more kind of therapeutic type of things, I am not a therapist, and I'm not, I'm in a relationship. I'm not married, so I don't have great marriage advice to give. I don't have kids, so it's not that I can sit there and tell a parent what's best for their children. I had to learn that where my expertise is in the law. Yeah. And there's only so much that I can do within that realm. Now,
okay, on that, I interrupted you. You want to finish your point?
Yeah, so I was just saying that you learn. It's still as much as you teach yourself. Yes, you are within this box. There are still the cases that come up that pull on the heartstrings. And I still notice that, like, I've had to learn, coping mechanisms at the end of the day, to shed that energy that I take, because really everything I deal with all day is to an extent miserable, for lack of a better word. Yeah. So you learn coping mechanisms to deal with it, so that you're not taking things home with you. But definitely I have to take, a little bit of time to unwind from the job before I can kind of get back into my life, and not wear that with me into my life. But sometimes it leaks in, depending on, what the situation is. All right.
Let's take a quick break. We'll continue our conversation. Again, Laura Paris is with us. She is a associate lawyer and part of, team lead with Shulman Partners LLP. She's in Toronto. If you're in the Toronto area and you're looking for help, ask a divorce lawyer anything.
Welcome back to News Talk Tonight with Jim Richards on the iHeartRadio Talk Network.
I want to ask our guest in a couple of seconds' time what would the 3 things that she would recommend anybody in a relationship do, because I'm guessing Laura Paris is with us, by the way, associate lawyer and team lead at Shulman Partners. It's Ask a Divorce Lawyer Anything, but I'm guessing that most people think, oh, I don't need this or that because they're in that honeymoon stage of their relationship and they can't conceive that anything would ever go sideways.
Yeah, so I mean, when I'm looking at kind of if someone approaches me at the beginning of a relationship, or prior to cohabitating or entering into a marriage, a couple of things that I'm looking at. One is who owns property in the situation, and where are you going to be living? If you have somebody moving into a property that you own, it creates some vulnerabilities once you've reached a spousal status. So, for example, if you get married and you live in a property that you owned prior to the marriage, and that's the same property that you're living in when you separate, it's considered a matrimonial home. Matrimonial home, you do not get the benefit of getting a credit for what that property was worth when you entered into the marriage. So it could create a major financial difference in what things look like in the event of a separation. Whereas if that was just an investment property and not considered a matrimonial home, you would get a deduction for that.
So all of those things you would recommend people put in writing with some sort of an agreement, right?
Absolutely. Like I'm a firm believer of especially given the fact that a lot of people are getting married later in life now. So a lot of people are more established when they're getting married. You're also having a lot of people that are leaning on their parents for that kickstart in life. So maybe that first house you were able to buy was funded primarily by your inheritance or something that your parents gave you to start things off. So I'm a firm believer of the fact that whatever you bring in, you should be able to walk away with. But the law doesn't necessarily always provide for that. So having an agreement that specifically stipulates that is important. Another thing to be mindful of is if you earn significantly more money than your spouse, there is a potential that you could be on the hook for spousal support somewhere down the line. So considering an agreement that either waives your rights to that or at least limits your rights to that, the other party's rights to make that claim against you, so that you don't end up at the end of the road with a hefty spousal support obligation. And kind of getting into some of the weirder things that weirder or more unique things that people deal with. If you have a pet, and that's a pet that you want to make sure comes back to you in the event of a separation, putting something like that in agreement is very smart, because pets under the law are considered property. They don't get the same treatment as a child. You're not going to have a judge that's going to sit there and do a custody arrangement for a pet. They look at it as who's the rightful bona fide owner of this pet.
So it sounds like people are coming to you after things are too late. They're not coming to you saying take care of these things before. I wonder, have you seen prenups or putting this thing in writing ruin the relationship and they wouldn't get married because they couldn't agree on what it would be?
I haven't personally encountered that. I think that if you do get to a point where you are engaging a lawyer to draft an agreement like that for you, you've already had that serious conversation and have already come to an agreement of sorts where you've decided that that's going to be kind of a precondition to moving forward with the next step. Okay. But I would imagine that prior to speaking to a lawyer, I'm sure that many relationships probably have some rocky roads and potentially come to an end as a result.
We got about 5 minutes, so let's kind of do a lightning round if we could. What is the number one reason for cheating? I think people suspect it's not what number one reason for divorce. People suspect it's cheating, but what is it?
In my experience, I'd say a lot of it comes down to financial issues, financial secrets, financial control, things like that.
What's financial control that he or she says you can't spend that much? That sort of stuff?
Or Again, going back to that kind of traditional relationship where, one party's been historically the breadwinner and managing the finances, the other party has no idea what's been going on, and then they start to become curious and realize that they have no insight on it. And when they start asking those questions, the questions lead to arguments. Also, in terms of excessive debt, if there's addictions, gambling, things like that, a lot of financial issues, in my view, tend to be a big reason why people separate.
You're not here to drum up more business, but being in a miserable household, staying together for the kids doesn't sound like a great idea to me.
It's in my experience, it's not. I'm also a product of I come from a divorced family myself. And I was 10 or 11 when my parents separated. And I have to say that seeing my parents separated and happy apart was a much better experience for me than being a child in a relationship where, and I had relatively a positive separation between my parents, but watching your parents fight every day teaches you not great habits for relationships that you build later in life. So making that decision earlier on is actually, in my view, the better thing you can do for your kids.
Do you see the real world reality? And again, this isn't a stat, but I'm guessing what you see is that I think everybody's like, oh, the man is the cheater and the man is the reason that he cheated, they're getting divorced. But do you see the reality as it's probably a 50-50 street, or is that not true?
I would say it's probably 50-50 for sure.
Yeah. And in terms of stuff, I would think the ugliest stuff that you have to see is like people who are petty, male or female, about the kids, and that the kids are literally torn apart.
Yeah, one of the first mediations I was engaged in with a very, very senior and well-known family lawyer. He made a comment to my client, or to the clients, that really, really stuck with me. And it was, if your child's drowning in a pool, are you sitting there arguing about whose fault it is that they're drowning, or are you trying to save them? And that is something that is so relevant in family law, and something that I see so often.
Wow. Parents
are so fixated on who to blame that they forget that their child is suffering in the midst of that, and that who's to blame is not important. It's fixing what happened and getting the children the help and getting them into a safe space and a better place.
Craziest reason for divorce you've ever heard?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Okay, just give me. Okay, if you got one, then go ahead. But
okay, interesting. I have a case right now where my client was pretty much they kind of manipulated the government to an extent, entered into a separation agreement for the sake of getting the benefits of, because you get tax relief for spousal support. And my client just kind of followed along with the situation, didn't really think much of it, said, okay, all right, let's get these tax benefits. And then was told not too long ago that her husband was getting remarried and the divorce had already happened. So that was
oh, yikes.
Completely knocked her off her socks, had no idea that was happening. She kind of followed along with everything, saying, all right, we get a tax benefit here, and only to find out, well, now he's getting remarried, and he asked her to be in a polygamous relationship.
Okay. Laura, thank you very much for your time. Laura Paris is an associate lawyer and team lead, Shulman Partners LLP. Ask a divorce lawyer anything. Really grateful for your time tonight.
Thank you.
It's the iHeart Talk Radio Network. Slow News Day, and The Rundown addresses all the big news stories of the past 24 hours. I'm Jim Richards. It's News Talk Tonight.